I think at this point in time, pretty much everybody on the internet is aware of eboys and egirls. But what I don't think people know is where they actually came from. And I don't even think there's a good place to find out. If you check Wikipedia, it's practically blank. There's like nothing there explaining where this came from. So I'm going to be talking about my personal experience, what I've witnessed, as well as what I could research. And we're going to be talking about the history of eboys and egirls, ekids, if you will. Before we can talk about how the culture came to be, we have to talk about the origins of the words eboy and egirl. Where did they come from? The first use of egirl that kind of relates to what we know today is, I think, 2009. And it's basically referring to like a catfish on the internet. And the early uses of both these terms, like around this era, just kind of were always along those lines of like catfish or like girl that's only really online. What I think, this is just a theory I have, but I think the whole not like other girls memes, if you remember those, I think that kind of plays into it, because the early uses of these words were like super connected to the gaming community. So I kind of think that these girls on the internet kind of were a little bit like alternative in that kind of way. In 2014 and 2015, there's some crucial things happening that would eventually snowball into the ekid movement, such as sad boys, young lean, vaporwave to some extent. That whole plethora of edgy rappers coming out around that time on SoundCloud. And most importantly, emo rap, with artists such as Bones, Lil Peep, and Nothing Nowhere gaining traction around this time. Specifically Lil Peep, of course. Like the way he dressed, like his hair, just everything about him just perfectly exemplified what the whole idea of an eboy was to me. Like spending all your time on the internet just because you hate everyone you know in real life.
On top of hating class, Gustav didn't like his classmates. He told Fader, they were like the stereotypical high schoolers from the movies. It's hard to find people you fuck with. During this time, Lil Peep spent a lot of time alone in his room listening to punk and rap music. He suffered from depression and suicidal thoughts, demons he would continue to battle for the rest of his life. But according to him, the internet and underground rap circuit saved his life. Gustav got into listening to underground acts on SoundCloud and YouTube, which inspired him to try doing it himself.
He was just like the perfect poster child for what this movement would become. There's a lot of other small interests influencing this style. I mean, specifically from fashion, like you look at like the whole dress shirts and dress shirts under like a long sleeve thing. That definitely comes more from the fashion world, as well as belts with the like seatbelt on them and stuff like that. There's definitely a lot of fashion influence that's clearly visible in the style, specifically like streetwear, techwear, and still to this very day, like on fashion pages, they just love to make fun of eboys and make memes about them because it's still part of that world too.
This picture I'm wearing like fucking 10 rings or some shit. I'm looking like a transformer, basically more metal than skin on my hands. And yeah, don't do this, guys. I think you should keep it more simple, like here, like 2 or 3 rings. Let's cut all the bullshit and get straight into like reviewing some of my eBay rings.
Another big influence on this culture was gaming and anime culture, because I mean, like I said, the word originated from the gaming community, and these people love to spend a lot of time online, so obviously like they're going to be interested in video games. They kind of go hand in hand. Anime as well, it kind of is involved with that whole culture. And this is a smaller one, but skateboarding also, I think, had quite a bit to do with it, because a lot of what this culture is kind of combining aesthetics of like rap and sort of punk, emo type of looks, which skateboarding has been doing since the 90s, right? That's what skateboarding has always been. And it's also just a dominant like youth culture. So I think there's definitely influence from that. One other thing that I've come across a lot and I don't really know much about is the whole tumblr grunge scene, which seems to have like highly influenced the e-girl style and I guess e-boy style by association. I don't really know much about this, like I said, but if you do, tell me about it. It seems like a very similar style, and you know, it's the same kind of demographic, so it seems possible that ekids stem from this to some extent. There was people with a lot of overlapping interests that existed in multiple categories, and there's kind of a culture starting to form around it, and these people would happen to get called eboys or egirls frequently because they spent so much time online, and they just kind of tended to be like that way, like kind of attention seeking, whatever. But they still were not the same thing. You would never say eboy to refer to somebody's interests. That wasn't a thing. It was to refer to the way somebody acted online.
Just fucking follow all these bitches. Oh shit, I'm following too fast. This person right here, NetJets, they made jets. Follow them. Now that you followed all these people, the followers should magically just roll in. Or you can fucking buy them. That's what all the egos do. Step number 3. Go on Twitter. Go to your DMs and start flirting with everybody.
I think gradually these cultures and this word were becoming more and more connected with each other. Like say in 2015, they had basically nothing to do with each other. It was just maybe sometimes by coincidence they would connect. 2016, 2017, we started to see it be more closely associated with these particular scenes, but it still wasn't there. I think 2018 was the year when it finally became like a e-boy was this culture. It wasn't just someone online looking for attention. It was this specific culture and this specific set of music and clothing, etc. And I think this meme here, which I'll put it there, I guess. I think that had a ton to do with it. Like, even look at these things. It just kind of was summing up a lot of the stereotypes around this time about what these people were like. But I think it's like a chicken or the egg scenario of, yeah, this meme was created to reference these type of people, but how many people probably saw this meme and then associated that with these type of people? So it kind of was like a circular thing, you know? This image basically turned what I was explaining as a bunch of blobs that intersected into a concrete thing that could be defined and seen as just one. It was a thing. It was no longer a bunch of little things that may have come under one banner. It was, this is it. This is what an ekid is. And I can't even remember when exactly this came out. In my memory, it was like maybe late summer, early fall of 2018. But the earliest one I can find is actually summer of 2019, which is really weird. Yeah, late 2018, I think, was when this started to ramp up. It started to go from just being kind of an obscure niche set of communities into something that would eventually go on to be basically like mainstream, like well known, like everyone knows what they are now. I think one of the key moments in this was that video. It was like, what's new Scooby-Doo? Coming, you know it. I'll just show it. I don't gotta sing.
In the seas cooking with the
We also can't forget to mention those Twitter posts that were like, you know, goth GF, goth BF, blah blah blah. Like, it was about that, and it was a weird shift. It was actually a really big shift, because if anyone remembers 2016, 2017, it was all about like goth cringe compilation, emo cringe compilation, and then suddenly it shifted to like, like I want a goth GF, which is how it still kind of is now, but I think the tides are shifting again, interestingly. Also in 2018, like, emo rap was still big. It was maybe even at its peak, although Lil Peep and X had died. That also introduced a lot of people into emo rap, so it was not like it didn't kill it off yet. That was still a little bit down the road.
Are there requirements to becoming an e-boy? there's like the certain music style. So you have like that sad boy stuff, and obviously
Sad
like
boy?
the sad boy music. Yeah, you know.
Is that a genre?
You like Juice WRLD and like Lil Peep, those types of
Juice
music.
WRLD, Lil Peep, both sad boy music.
You know, like the Post Malone song, Rich and Sad?
Yeah.
That. Like, you know, like I'm obviously doing well off, but I'm just miserable for no reason.
So emo rap was making it big, and that the way those guys were dressing was making people want to dress like that. Because at this point, the whole like emo scene thing was all but dead. So this was like the new thing for that kid who wanted to be edgy. It was no longer Suicide Silence or Bring Me the Horizon. Now it was about Lil Peep and XXXTentacion. Something else you see all the time now, which I think is funny, is like emo kids and scene kids and goths like really going after the ekids super hard, like, oh, they're ripping off our style, they're a bunch of posers, which just isn't true. The whole mentality behind what an ekid is totally different. The music is totally different. The fashion is similar, but it's coming from a different place. It's not the same. It actually kind of bothers me when I hear that, like, people say, oh, ekids are like the new goth, ekids are the new emo, which to some extent is true, but there's also different sides of it that those cultures don't really touch. For example, the fashion thing. This culture was just blowing up with the combination of the meme. Emo rap was just really at its peak. Like I said, that What's New Scooby-Doo video was actually huge. You'd see those Twitter posts about goth, GF, goth, BF, blah, blah, blah. You know, these things all were coming together, and it just really hit its stride in like early 2019. You know what I mean? Like, people started to see this and went, oh, I want to dress like that. They looked at these videos and these memes, oh, I want to dress like that. This was also the era of the eboy juice, egirl juice meme, which was like the worst thing ever. It was videos like that that made me never want to use TikTok back then. It was like, dude, this just seems so dumb. So in like 2019, this was becoming like so well known, like people were just coming into it who had no knowledge of where all this stuff was coming from, and were just kind of joining it just because it was trendy and because they kind of thought it looked cool. And I think it really diluted the culture of it, you know what I mean? Like, it kind of took away some of those aspects, like that super interested in internet thing and stuff like that. It just kind of like diluted the culture. That's when that dude Kurtis Connor made a reaction video.
We're going to be talking about eboys. It's a new phenomenon, and it's only getting worse as time goes on. And I feel like you've all seen this type of boy around the internet. You know, they got their striped shirts, they got their big hair, they got their fucking trapezoid jaws that are like, you know, like, oh my god.
That's when it blew up from being a niche internet thing and kind of a TikTok thing as well, into something that a mainstream, just like complete normie, like internet user who only had Facebook and YouTube would know about. Like, people who never ventured outside of those two websites were now aware of eboys and egirls. One of the weirdest things happening around this time, like late 2019 or so, was the whole explosion of vsco girls onto the scene. And because this came out at basically the exact same time as ekids were blowing up, the two terms kind of got entwined, despite having literally nothing to do with each other, except both being trends kind of hitting their peak at the same time. And I think because of this, a lot of people assume that ekids died just as soon as vsco girls died, like just a flash in the pan trend. But I think the difference here is that ekids existed for a long time before they got famous, and they will exist for a long time after their peak of mainstream relevance. And in terms of actual number of dedicated ekids, I think it's the same, if not higher, than it was in, like, say, early 2018. I think it's actually still relatively large. Like, we're still in like peak ekids, so to speak. It hasn't died down yet. And even on like a mainstream type of level, there's still ekids out there, like eboys with like millions of followers. The Jersey egirl, she just came out like earlier this year, so it's still like very much relevant in my opinion. I mean, ekids in general, it's never been like a huge actual population. You know what I mean? Like, there's never actually been that many around. It's nowhere close to like emo, where there's probably been millions and millions of emo kids at certain times. Ekids have always been a pretty small population in comparison to something like that, because it's so niche. It's also splitting into two separate ways, which is like the drain gang sort of side of it and the emo rap trap metal side of it. They're kind of going into different directions, and drain gang people would probably hate to be called eboys, but just look at them. Just use your eyes, man. They look the same. And I mean, Young Lean was even mentioned in the famous meme, as well as Blade. So I think it's pretty hard to deny that that is kind of the same culture. But they're splitting off, and it's just really weird. I think also in like 10 years, 5 years, maybe even less possibly, I don't think there's going to be such a thing as like individual subcultures like the way we think of them now. I think people are just going to be alternative. I don't think people are going to label themselves as emo or goth or ekid or scene kid or anything like that. I think in 5 years, people are just going to be like, oh yeah, I'm just alternative, and they just dress however they want and listen to whatever they want. So I think this trend is only got a couple years. Thanks for watching the video. If you're wondering why I am dressed different, it's because I'm already filming part 2, which is How to Be an Ekid 2020 edition. Check it out.
Hey guys, this is a part of the video where I put my mouth up to the lens and start talking into it.